Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. We're actually going to do a little bit of a crossover between Higgsfield and Google Veo 3 because there's been this crazy new way of creating that I've discovered using Higgsfield. And with this new method that we've now got available to us, it actually unlocks a crazy high potential and a really useful skill that you should definitely have in your tool belt as an AI creative to potentially solve a lot of issues right now. What are these issues that we're trying to solve? Well, it's like product consistency. How do we actually implement a product into a scene? So let's say our starting frame that we are uploading to a Google, a video generator like Google Veo 3 doesn't have the product in it. Well, how does the camera pan to actually have the product in the scene? Well, we're going to learn how to do that today using Google Veo 3. So here is an example of this kind of new workflow template that we've got here. And you can see here, let me break this down for you. This is actually the first frame, the first image that we're giving to the AI video generator. So with this first image, instead of creating a photo like this one here in Midjourney that I created of this Porsche inside of this warehouse, let's say traditionally I uploaded this photo from Midjourney into a video generator. And I said to it, transform into this a transformer. I could describe what transformer I would want it to turn into, but again, we wouldn't have any control over that. With this new method, we can combine these elements together. So I can say, the Porsche drives really quickly through the warehouse, and as it's driving, it transitions into a Optimus Prime looking white transformer robot and stands inside the warehouse. And the camera swings around and looks at the transformer. So we're seeing it from the front. Okay, so we're providing a little bit of camera motion in there. It's nothing too crazy, nothing too detailed, but we're basically telling the scene as this first frame that we're uploading to Google Veo 3. We're basically saying, this is the scene. This is what we want it to transition into. We've provided it with an annotation and a bit of text as well. This is basically our text prompt, right? So we're combining it all together into one still image frame. Now, what happens when we turn this into a video? Let's look. So check this out. Okay, now what's really impressive about this is that it's almost like a Fidelity thing, right? So if we take a look at the details on this robot that it transforms into, it's got these panels, glass panels on the front. It's got these wings here and the marks on the helmet. If we take a look at this first frame, take a look at that. We've got the marks on the helmet, the glass panels on the front. Sure, they're blue in the actual video transition, but in this one, they're red. We could also adjust that in post-production with something like Adobe After Effects. But also, look, it's got the wings. Let's maybe take a look at some of the detailing down here. Has it got the circle bottom bit? Let's have a look. It does, in fact, have the circular bottom mechanical cog part. So this is a really, really strong method that I recently discovered where you can actually make exact product transition videos happen, okay? And I actually did this with, quite a few different and exciting examples. So another one, I tried to test it out with getting all of these cogs, individual constituent parts of a watch to then transition into a watch. And it really, really struggled with it. This is all my ideation phase where I was coming up with a bunch of concepts. This is where things got really interesting though. So with this example, I generated this in Midjourney. So if we kind of take a look at my Midjourney generations here, I'll just scroll back through because it's not that long ago that I made this video. So yeah, you can start to see some of my generations here. So this probably would have been a good image to use, but looks like this one was the exact photo that I used in the example. But and this was my prompt, by the way, bird's eye view of a cutting mat with equally distanced lines on a cutting mat. Laying on top of the cutting mat is a lot of tech parts that make up an Apple iPhone. The iPhone is completely deconstructed on the table and the parts are neatly organized on the table. The scene is well lit with soft, professional, warm light. Okay, so we got some really interesting results. Now, a lot of these would be really interesting to trial and error. And I went through a couple of iterative phases to actually get to that image. I started off with just a metallic workshop counter, then went down the iPhone route, and then realized I wanted it to be more of a cutting mat instead of the metallic counter. So we ended up here, okay? Now, with that, I then took that to Photoshop and I took that image and then using Photoshop, I actually like kind of mapped it out, right? So I'll show you a couple of examples here. So here is the Photoshop file that I used. So you can see here, this is literally just my Midjourney image that I created. And then I made a separate layer and just added in, a simple line annotation. And then I added in an image of the exact product that I wanted this all to kind of transition into. Then I added in a text component in here that just says all the components on the cutting mat rise into the air with zero gravity and transition into an iPhone with the screen on and all the apps showing on the mat. Okay? Now let's have a look at our generations. What did we actually get from this? Let's have a look because I got quite a few varying results. Okay, that one, it didn't work out particularly well, but it's kind of like pulling a slot machine, right? So let's have a look at this one. Okay, I'd say like the proportions so far have been like pretty off, but you'll see, we'll get like a really good result very soon. Have a look. Okay, this one was a really good example, primarily speaking, because if we kind of like break this down into a side-by-side almost. So if we are to compare like exact details in terms of fidelity on this example, we can see the app positioning here. We have the iPhone, the Safari, the text, the Apple Music logo, settings, wallet, health, Apple TV, podcast, apps, maps. Everything, including the widgets here, are all in the exact same place. So this was, for me, a real penny drop moment where I was like, holy crap. Okay, if we can get these exact like one-to-one product fidelity kind of like transition videos coming in, well, what else can we do? So I tried a bunch of different things with like trying to get the Apple Vision Pros to work, but then this is where I got really interested because I created this image in Midjourney, for example, this image here of this knight who, was passed out on the ground, and I wanted to add in some artifacts into the scene. So I wanted to add in those props. So that this sword with a golden dagger, and I wanted to add in some of these shields. I played around with a couple of different medieval shields. So take a look. Let's have a look and see how some of them turned out. Okay, that was one example where we got a sword and shield in. And then let's see this one. Another example. Now, this one, if we have a look at my text prompt, right? So here it says camera pans right to show a close-up of the sword and shield on the ground. So this was quite an interesting one. I was then like, I kind of want them to be like actually thrown into the scene. So this time I changed the text prompts to be knight rolls over and picks up the sword and shield. And bear in mind for these videos, I'm like actually writing in no text prompts like into the actual prompt bar. Like there was no prompt, okay? It was just blank. So this was all I gave it, just this image, and this is what we got. Notice how here, right, there is nothing, like none of these props in the scene, and then here it already like puts those props into the scene, right? Which is just crazy because now they're like in the scene for us. We can then have the character interact with it. So he then picks it up and he then starts playing around with it. So this was like where I was like, okay, now how can we apply this to a marketing sense? How can we use this workflow to potentially add products into the scene? And that's what we're going to develop and work through together right now, live and direct. So I actually just want to play this one out in its totality. Wow. So that was super, super impressive. Let's have a look at this one. Right, a little more of like a funky generation here. But what I would say, and this is really important, and I've kind of been like having a look at some of the work that people have been putting in the school community so far, and I've noticed that a lot of people will generate an 8-second long clip, in Google Veo 3, you can see that Google Veo 3 generates 8-second long videos. You do not want to use that entire 8-second long clip. Please, please, please do not use that entire clip. What we call in the AI space right now, I call it mining, right? So inside of this 8 seconds, you obviously need to cut out the first 2 seconds as it does this weird transition to kind of fill out the entire scene. But maybe you only start your video clip that you actually end up using from maybe like 1 second and 30 milliseconds in. So maybe you take it from this exact point and then you cut. Or maybe actually, for example, here, right? Because now we have the 2 props in the scene. You would then start your video at the 4-second mark. And then you would cut it here, right? So you would only mine out the most important and most valuable parts from inside of this video, okay? So I really want to kind of walk you through this step by step so that you can do this too, because Higgsfield have actually recently released their own feature that allows you to create your own annotations. So let me show you where you can find that. So on the Higgsfield homepage here, you can see that they've added draw to video. And you can see you can add in products into the scene as well, right? So you could like draw in annotations and be like, explosion happens right here, and it will then add those explosions in that exact spot. So give me a second and I'll show you an example of that. So here's an interesting use case that Higgsfield actually sent me themselves, and I'd really like to show this one to you. So you can see here with this image, they've added in like random explosion splats on these like as another image on top of this scene, right? So you can see here we've got the photo, the 2 explosions. Check it out. Right? So you can use this to get really targeted with exact things that you want to happen in the scene. Here's another example where you've got a car and a robot. Let's see the transition. So you can see, you can also use this to kind of add characters into the scene, add really cool camera transitions so that you can get your character to show up in that exact spot. So on Higgsfield, now if we click into the draw to video section, this is a previous generation of mine, so let's just clear this out. This is the user interface that you'll be greeted with, okay? So when you start, you can either create blank, which literally just gives you a blank screen, and I honestly prefer it this way. So I would start by creating a blank. Now at the bottom left of the screen, you'll see here it says Minimax Haluo 02. Now this is a video model, which is a Chinese video model, which is a very, very high performing one. But I like to use Google Veo 3 because it gives us sound effects and I really, enjoy that aspect of it. So you can click here and you can see that you can actually switch between the different models where this tool actually works. So I like to switch to Google Veo 3 Fast. I believe it's like the best bang for your buck in terms of credits, and you can see here it costs 80 credits to generate. So make sure you head to Google Veo 3 Fast. Now with this, you can see at the bottom here, we've got a couple of options. You can simply like scribble on and annotate yourself, so you don't even need to use any Photoshop. And then if you want to undo an action, you can press Command Z or Control Z on the keyboard, and it will undo anything that you've just done. So if you wanted to undo your last action, you can press Control or Command Z. Additionally, you have the eraser tool, so you can go in and like specifically get detailed with your annotations, or you can add in, areas. So like, let's say we added in an image into this scene. So you can do that by clicking on the photo icon, and you can then upload a photo directly in here, and you can adjust the sizing of it. So I like to bring it down to be about 1/3 of the canvas. Now from here, you can literally get as specific as like putting in like a square, for example, and annotating around here, right? And then you could add in like a line like this, and you can then add in a photo of like an iPhone, for example, and then you could say, this phone goes up in the air, rotates, transitions into this iPhone. So let's build this out right now. So now I've just found an image of an iPhone online. We can simply upload that directly into our scene here. And we can simply adjust the sizing. So we can put that in here like so. I think it's important when you're adding in the product to make sure that the product, like obviously the larger it is on the canvas, the more pixels it has to understand what the product actually is and all of the details around it. So I like to have the product as large as I can. So now we have a photo of the product. We could now add in some text in here giving a description as to what we want to happen next in the scene. So for that, we can simply use the text option here, and we can select that and click on top here. And then we can simply say, it's annoying, it doesn't let you draw in a text box, but let's just go, the black iPhone rises up into the air and all of the constituent parts of the iPhone also rise into the air with zero gravity. A lot of these video models try to generate things that like physically make sense because it doesn't want to generate things that like where the physics is off. So if you tell it that there's zero gravity, it will then like help provide you with like a better transition, by the way. So rises into the air with zero gravity. The tech components combine in mid-air and creates a smooth transition into the iPhone, into an iPhone with the screen on. The screen shows all the apps on the homepage, and it sits upright on top of the cutting mat. Okay, so this is a first attempt. I would probably say that we may need to even adjust this at some point to go through a few rounds of iterations. So let's just see how this goes. We can actually move this iPhone arrow annotation like so. Right? So what's interesting, and I actually wish that they allowed you to do this as well, is that if they allowed us to download this image, because I've used all my credits for the month on Higgsfield, which is really frustrating. But what I could do is I could just take a screenshot of this. Hopefully they'll add a feature where you can just download this annotated image. And then you could take this annotated image and bring it straight to Google Veo, for example. I'm going to go straight to Google Veo 3. So, and I'm only doing this because I've literally run out of credits on Higgsfield. So you can just hit the generate button directly in Higgsfield, but you could also go to Google Flow and you can see that I've done a couple of generations with meta classes inside of Google Flow in here. So if we start a brand new project, we can go to frames to video, and now we can upload an image. So for that, we can upload this screenshot that we've taken and hit crop and save. So annoyingly, inside of Google Flow, you do actually have to add in a text prompt. Like it can just be as simple as one word, right? And it will then allow you. However, if you do not have anything in here, it won't allow you. In Higgsfield, you don't even need to write in a text prompt. It will just make it based on the image that you give it. So we could just put in the word transition, for example, and hit generate. Our generations have loaded in. Let's check it out. Overall product fidelity, really, really high, I would say. Interestingly, the time is different at the top here, and the battery is actually different from the original, which is quite interesting. And we've now got more Wi-Fi than the original, which is also pretty interesting. But overall, the products or the apps are in, relatively the right place. They're all in the same order, but there is a little, gap in here. I would also say that obviously we've lost the background in here, and we've now just got this white background. So maybe my tweak would be to go back into Higgsfield here, and I would add in a sentence that says maybe right at the start of this text prompt so that it happens straight away. The camera fills the screen with the cutting mat scene. And the whole screen is filled with the cutting mat and the wooden table underneath the cutting mat. Okay. Then we can simply just move that around until we're happy so it's not blocked by anything. And let's take another screenshot of this. And we can upload this new image directly now with this new text prompt at the top into Google Flow. And we can just add in the word transition again and create this transition. So a lot of this AI process is like very iterative because you may run into roadblocks with, your workflow. This is all experimental right now. However, it's definitely opening the doors to some really, really interesting possibility. So while that's loading, I actually want to show you maybe another example that we do together. And for this, I'm actually going to use Photoshop and not Higgsfield own tool. You can use either or. I'm just going to use Photoshop for this example. So we can build a blank canvas here. Now inside Photoshop, what if we wanted to actually add in a Cocoa Pops like specific product that has text and is a bit more complex into the scene? Well, I'm going to go ahead and go to Midjourney where we can generate, or actually, do you know what? Let's actually have a look on YouTube and check to see what like a specific Kellogg's advert looks like. I want to have a look. Okay, this is a great example. So let's try to generate an image of a similar scene, right? Maybe a Kellogg's bowl in there, red Kellogg's bowl with milk, in a nice modern kitchen environment. That doesn't have the actual product in it so that we can, incorporate it in. So let's do that right now. Let's go to Midjourney. What's interesting actually is what we could do is you could take a screenshot of this environment here. So let's take a screenshot, right? We could download this image, okay? And using a tool like Image Prompt, what this tool does is you can upload photos into it and it will read the metadata from inside of the photo and it will generate you a text prompt based on that image. So, for example, we could tailor this to Midjourney or whatever image model we're using. So, because I'm going to generate an image in Midjourney, select Midjourney and hit generate prompt, and you get 5 free uses a day. So I just have like a bunch of accounts on this website and you get like unlimited generations with this. So now it spits out this really detailed, like really nice prompt. So I can copy this and we can go to Midjourney. Let's go to create. Now in here, we can paste in this prompt, okay? And we can remove these parameters at the end, right? And just hit generate. Now, hopefully, it's going to generate a pretty similar environment, but in our own style. Obviously, we have our personalization feature on, so it's understanding my taste and what I would like to kind of be featured. And we can see here, we've now got something that already looks like a Kellogg's advert, right? And what we can do from this photo here in Midjourney, we could go to edit. We can remove this box in here because we want to create a transition video where the box shows up. And now in our prompt, we actually need to remove the part where it talks about the Cocoa Pops cereal bowl. So anywhere in our prompt, we want to scrub through and remove anything where it mentions the product. That way, when we regenerate now in Midjourney, it won't try to regenerate that because it's not inside of our prompt bar here. I can see in here, we've got this. It says the Cocoa Pops is displayed prominently. So I can remove that. We can remove this part of the prompt as well because that's giving details of the Cocoa Pops bowl. We can hit submit. Let's have a look. This one's actually did remove the Cocoa Pops bowl for us. It's tried to do something down there with Cocoa Pops. I really like this one. This is really cool. I feel like what we could do is we could also adjust this milk here. So we have, we can just say a jug of milk on the table. And we can like kind of craft and hone our first image frame here before we go ahead and give it to Google Veo. So this is now loading in. Hopefully we get a nice jug of milk because that other one was a bit messed up. This is great. Perfect. Super happy with this. Let's have a look at the others. I think that's the best one of the bunch. Yep, it is. Brilliant. So now with this image that I'm happy with, we could go ahead and download this photo here. So I can download that image, and now you can see we have this photo. Now let's head back into Photoshop here. So with this, we can now add our photo that we've just created in Midjourney into our Photoshop file. And again, you can use Higgsfield for this. I'm just using Photoshop because I'm more familiar and I want to show you a different workflow that you could also try. So now we have these two scenes. What I want to happen now is I want the camera to pan, almost do like a quick whip pan across the table. So maybe to the left, and it shows the Cocoa Pops in like the product sat on the table. Okay. So now we could go in here and I could say the camera whip pans left to show the yellow Cocoa Pops box that is sat on the table. Behind the Cocoa Pops box is a window, and a bright light shines through the window onto the Cocoa Pops box, right? And obviously with this, we can just adjust the text so that it's all visible inside of our frame. We can also adjust the size of the text, so we can bring that down. Amazing. So let's just review this prompt. So the camera whip pans left to show the yellow Cocoa Pops box that is sat on the table. Behind the Cocoa Pops box is a window, and a bright light shines through the window onto the Cocoa Pops box. Okay, it's a bit of a tongue twister, that one. It's cool. So I'm happy with this. Maybe we could add in, a simple like brush. So I can add in a new layer in here, and I could add in like a simple, let's make a smaller brush here. Just a simple arrow annotation. Amazing. Now we can export this and head to Google Flow or Higgsfield, up to you, wherever you have credits. So inside of Flow here, make sure you head to Frames to Video. Now we can upload this exact use case in here. Okay, we can hit crop and save. Do bear in mind that obviously Google Veo 3 can only handle horizontal images and formats. Now, interestingly, I have just discovered that if we go to upload this photo into Google Flow, there is a bit of an issue. That issue is that Google is not currently allowing us to upload images of minors. So you'll see here, once it tries to upload, we do not allow image uploads of minors at this time. Please try a different image. Okay, so let's go back to our photo that we were creating in Midjourney here. Now, I guess we could probably just go around here, because I like the character. Maybe we just make him a teenager. So let's do a male teenager. Okay, so here's some experimental features that I just wanted to share with you as well, because this is quite interesting. A lot of these, when you can see my prompt here on the side here, a male teenager who looks excited. When we try to change this guy's face to look slightly older, you could argue that this guy looks a bit older, so we could try it with him. Even when we prompt it to be like a man in his 20s, you can see it's still like not quite a man in his 20s. So this one is not too bad too, so we can explore this one as well. Where I have found the most success is actually using flux context. So this is on using FreePic. So I uploaded the photo and I said, replace the younger character to be a teenager. And we got an image like this. Now this one is much better in my opinion. So I'm probably just going to end up rolling with that one. So let's add that in instead. So moment of truth, we can upload this into Google Flow now, and fingers crossed we don't get hit with that restriction again. Amazing, we're in. Okay, now we can just have like maybe just say whip pan. Okay, so we can add in a really basic prompt, and we're kind of basing this text prompt off of like the first action that we're asking for this video generator to do for us. So let's see what we get. And while that's loading, here is remember earlier on, we actually ran into that issue where we still had like the white background in here. So We then tried the caveat where we actually tried to tell it to zoom right in straight away. So let's see if we got better results. Not quite. I mean, that looks really cool. But it's still not doing it. What I would probably do if we're still running into issues is maybe I would prompt it to say like no white background, and like maybe that's a good like rule of thumb would be start your prompt with no white background, camera zooms into the image on the left to make it full screen, and then say what you want to happen. Let's have a look how this has turned out. Holy crap. Okay. Dude. Oh my god. This has actually changed everything. No, even as I'm filming this, my mind has blown. Like, being blown. Because this is so early right now. Like, these workflows are, like, completely brand new. We're in the explore phase. This product fidelity is insane. In terms of, like, text, real delicious, delightfully chocolatey, no artificial colors. What is that last word? No artificial coloring or flavoring is my guess. But I'll tell you what, that is unbelievable. Just like a chocolate milkshake, only crunchy. Wow. My mind is blown. Ladies and gentlemen, you can literally now create anything that you want when it comes to product marketing and advertising. This is truly groundbreaking. So imagine like compositing that scene. So this is how I would then go about creating an entire advert, right? Would be to generate an image like that on Midjourney. So if we run back to our Midjourney generation here, I'm getting really excited as we're doing this. So if we run back to Midjourney here, okay, obviously we couldn't use a child in our scene. So we adjusted that until we got, at least we took the product out. Maybe we stuck with this image. Then we adjusted the milk behind it. So we got a perfect photo. Now we're happy with our character, or maybe we needed to adjust the character. So we took that image. So then we went to FreePic and we generated a slightly older version of this character here. So once we took the one that we liked the most, we then brought that to Photoshop, or you can use Higgsfield image to, draw to video section. And then we annotated it and we told it exactly what we wanted to happen. And then we can mine that footage so that, let's say this was in Higgsfield, right? You could then mine this footage. So we would download this video. So then we would take this video into our video editor of choice, right? And we could scale this up so it's now 1080p. And we can just crop it in like so. Then we would adjust the video. So we would cut to like here. And this, oh my God, this would be our footage. Ladies and gents, this is the secret sauce to create adverts at a super high level. Product integration, solved. Just like that. Now with this, you can also create really interesting ideas. So let's say you generated an image, right? Let's try another one. Okay, let's go to Midjourney. I'm excited about this. Let's keep rolling with it. So let's say we generated an image of someone who, like a close-up image of someone who had their hand in their pocket, and we wanted them to pull out a specific product from their pocket. Maybe it's a keychain, maybe it's a chocolate bar. Let's go with a chocolate bar, for example. So let's say we wanted them to pull out like a Cadbury's chocolate bar, okay? So we could have a close-up image of a man, or let's say a female, who has her hand in her pocket. She is wearing blue jeans. Around the pocket is stitching. Let's just add in some fine details. The lighting has natural daylight. And she is stood... Oh, maybe she's sat in her car? I don't know how that's going to turn out. Let's have a look, though. Okay, so I've generated quite a few different examples here. I tried to vary up the setting a little bit. So we've got her in the car. So I'm actually going to use this one here. Let's pick a couple of the best ones. This one here. Then let's try... Maybe I generated one of her on like the underground train. So maybe this one here. The reason why I like this one here, and I would prefer to use something like this over a super close-up image like this, for example, is because we don't have a huge amount of room to play with. If we think about like a Cadbury's chocolate bar and the size of the Cadbury's chocolate bar, it needs to make sense that the framing of the image has enough space for her to actually pull out this Cadbury's chocolate bar, right? So like this one, it could work. It could work. I will test it so that you can learn as well. But from my knowledge, I feel like it wouldn't work. So let's try this out. Okay. So let's start a brand new file here. Again, you can use Higgsfield for this. I'm using Photoshop. It's entirely up to you. Now we can drag and drop in this image. This is going to be our experimental one because again, we've got this close-up photo here. And we can also upload an image of the Cadbury's chocolate bar. So here is an exact replica of the product that I would like to use. So it's this Cadbury's Oreo sandwich chocolate bar. Okay, so let's drag and drop that in. Let's say our client says that, hey, we want this exact product coming out. It's not released yet, but here's a photo of it. We can then say, okay, we can work with that. We can use that product and have it show up in this scene. Cool. So now we can add in a very simple annotation. So we can add in a new layer using the brush tool. I'm just going to add an arrow in here. So we have the lady puts her hand in her pocket and pulls out a Cadbury Dairy Milk Oreo bar. The chocolate bar is unopened. I'm also going to duplicate this text here. And I'm also going to add in the camera zooms into her hand and the white background disappears. She is stood inside an office and she pulls her hand out from... she stood in an office. I think that's all we need. Maybe we add in a bit more camera direction as well, actually. So let's say next we want the camera pulls out and starts to zoom out as she pulls the chocolate bar out her pocket. Okay, so we have 3 instructions in this one. The camera zooms into her hand and the white background disappears. She stood inside an office. The lady puts her hand into her pocket and pulls out the Cadbury Dairy Milk Oreo bar. The chocolate bar is unopened. The camera pulls out and starts to zoom out as she pulls the chocolate bar out of her pocket. Okay, I like these instructions. I'm hoping we get a good generation here. So this is our first experiment here. I'm going to upload that in here. And let's see how it handles product fidelity or if it handles it at all. And if it doesn't handle it, let's figure out how we can fix it to make it work. So camera zoom in. We clearly got a good result with just dictating the first thing that we wanted to happen in the scene, which was whip pan camera in this example. For this one, we want camera zoom in. So let's showcase that right now. Okay, we actually have some really interesting generations here. So have a look at this. This is our first one. So close, right? So very close. Obviously, we had a bit of morphing as the Cadbury's bar comes out of the pocket here. However, product fidelity, pretty damn good, right? Pretty damn good. Okay, now take a look at this one.
The camera zooms into her hand and the white background disappears. She is stood inside an office. The lady puts her hand into her pocket and pulls out a Cadbury Dairy Milk Oreo bar. The camera zooms into...
So obviously the audio is completely messed up on this one. However, what we can do is just remove the audio, and we could either, potentially take some of the audio from this one and apply it into this one, or you could just manually add in your own audio, for example, using a sound effects library like Artlist, for example. However, this is a really interesting, I think this video here, if we mind it from here to pulling it out here, could be like a sneaky reveal. However, I just feel like the product fidelity on this shot is better. So I think where the strengths really lie, if we kind of look and identify where the strengths are, is, 2 image inputs definitely works really, really well. I have seen examples of where people do 3 image inputs, and I actually covered this on Instagram, where you had a location and 2 objects in the scene. You can do that too. So let's say we wanted to have the Kellogg's cereal box, and then next to it we wanted to have another specific product. We could upload both of those and have them next to each other. Similarly to the night example at the start of the video where I inputted those 2 props into the scene, you can add multiple props into the scene. I think in terms of trying to get multiple actions to happen, maybe it's starting to get a little bit complicated there. And that's all we have time for on YouTube. But if you want to learn everything that there is to know about creative Gen AI, then you should sign up to Gen HQ, which is the first link in the YouTube description. In Gen HQ, we actually invite the staff members from inside of these creative AI companies to come in and give you the top 1% of knowledge about all of the top creative Gen AI tools. We cover all of them in extreme detail on Gen HQ, so we leave no stone unturned. Whenever there's an update to any of these creative AI tools, we cover that inside Gen HQ as well, making sure that you're learning all of the best up-to-date creative AI workflow. We have 4 full-time staff members making sure that Gen HQ is the most up-to-date that we can possibly make it, and we even host in-person dinners and events, getting creatives back into a room together. We offer you exclusive discount codes so you can get access to all of these subscriptions at a lower cost. And we even have interviews with some of the top 1% of creatives who give you exact frameworks as to how you can go out and start charging $50,000 for a single AI advert right now. So if you want to sign up, it's the first link in the YouTube description, and I'll see you there.